Hey guys, so today's video is going to be about working in Brazil. I've had several other gringos, estrangeiros, foreigners who are immigrants to Brazil or who are interested in moving to Brazil asking me about how to earn a living here. So I'm just going to go over a few things that I have learned. I have to preface this by saying that my perspective is as an American living in Fortaleza, Brazil, which is vastly different from other cities and other parts of the country, okay? So if you are a foreigner living in a place like Sao Paulo or Rio, your experience may be very different than my experience living here in Fortaleza. So you're going to see me looking down occasionally because I keep notes, okay? So the first thing I wanted to talk about is considering your status here. Are you a legal permanent resident here, or are you someone just passing through? In my experience, the best opportunities, of course, typically come to legal permanent residents here. I've had a lot of people who are interested in maybe just visiting Brazil or doing some sort of working vacation, asking me about, well, how easy is it to get a job and what can I do and all of that. So I'll be honest, getting a job if you are not a permanent legal resident of Brazil, if you're in a place like Fortaleza or any of the countryside places, can be difficult. This is because the place is just not set up the way that places like Fortaleza are, or the way that a lot of American cities are, you know? So for example, in America, it's pretty easy to sort of go there, look in the newspaper, and see what's needed anywhere and just get a job. You just know what's available there. But in places like Fortaleza, on the other hand, they don't really advertise like that, you know? And as well, a lot of your employment here is based upon who you know or your previous skills or something. You have to have, in places like this, you have to have connections here, okay? So that's the number one thing. Are you a permanent legal resident, or are you just passing through, or are you illegal? I would definitely not recommend being an illegal immigrant anywhere in the world, but especially not a place like this, because illegal immigrants here they really can't participate in every aspect of the society. It's even worse than in a place like America, you know. Here, for example, you can't get a bank account. It would be very difficult for you to sort of be in the society, showing your face in the society, and even looking for work, even things that we consider menial labor, you know, like cleaning and stuff like that. So definitely, if you're going to go to a place like Fortaleza, outside of major cities like Rio or Sao Paulo, try to be a permanent legal resident, okay? The next thing is that I want to talk about the types of work you can do if you are a permanent legal resident, or even if you're passing through, you know, you might get lucky. Okay, so the first thing, of course, to consider is working online, doing some kind of thing online that does not require you to physically show up for a job. I've met a couple of people who do online teaching with companies, or they're able to do their work remotely, so they're still able to keep their connection to whatever country they came from or to the rest of the world. They're not really dependent on the society here for earning their money. So that's one way, working online. The second way that I have seen is people being sponsored by companies. This way is much more difficult because most of the companies here, they need to be able to prove that they don't have anyone in Brazil at all who can do your job. It's not exactly like that, but it's not too far off. So it will, and it's very expensive to sponsor foreign people to come here and work. Okay, so being sponsored by a company is, I would say, the least likely way that you would be able to work in Brazil, but I have seen it done. My favorite way, everybody's favorite way as a foreigner in Brazil, of course, is to be a teacher. That's what I do. Now with teaching, a lot of people feel like that they can just show up in the country and start teaching, but this isn't true, especially in places like Fortaleza. You know, my original profession is ICU nursing, and I had to change that when I came to Brazil, you know. So what did that entail? It entailed me first, when I was outside of Brazil, doing a course in how to be a language teacher. But when I came to Brazil, of course, all of that just flew out the window, and I had to really learn how to teach Brazilian people. And this required me to go and teach in a school for a while for low pay. I would recommend that, again, if you're in a place outside of very internationalized places like Rio or Sao Paulo, and if you are a permanent resident, trying to get a job in some of the English schools in your city. In those places, the pay tends not to be great, but what you gain is an understanding of how people here think about things, how they see the world. You gain an understanding about how they interact with their own language so that you understand how to teach them your language, and it gives you an opportunity to meet people in the community. Because another really important aspect of moving to a place like Fortaleza is that, you know, you can't just sort of drop in and be independent here. You really have to spend time getting to know people, building up a network of people, and just letting people know who you are and what you do. And that takes time. I would say it takes a year or two minimum, okay? And the fourth way that I have seen and that I eventually transitioned to was starting your own business. Once you get to a place like Fortaleza, you can see that there are actually a lot of different things that this place needs. There's a big lack of professionals in several different areas. You know, the Fortaleza, for example, is really trying to move in the direction of internationalizing, of becoming more international. But one of the biggest challenges to the place, of course, is that it does not have enough people that speak English or Spanish or French. I think those are the top 3 languages needed in this place. So it creates a lot of barriers to how fast and how quickly the place can evolve. So being an English teacher here, if you know how to teach Brazilian people, and if you have spent some time just in the society, building a reputation, building connections, and building friendships with people, is actually extremely lucrative, particularly if you own your own small company and make it a sort of service that you know, go to people's companies and do, you know. But as well, I've seen people start restaurants. There are a lot of bed and breakfasts, things like that. But the place, I mean, any kind of service that you can think of, places like Fortaleza, they need them. So you can be even more creative than I have been. Okay, so the third aspect of working in Fortaleza that I wanted to talk about is the language. As I have mentioned before, Fortaleza is not internationalized the way that places like Rio de Janeiro or Sao Paulo are. So if you come here, you have to be prepared to learn the language. I've seen some foreign people living here that they just haven't made any effort to learn Portuguese, and they are extremely limited in what they can do in this country, even in this city, because of their inability and unwillingness to learn how to communicate in another language. I've noticed that this is definitely a bigger issue for Americans than it is for Europeans. For European people, because it's more common for Europeans to have to learn other languages, they tend to do much better in this area than Americans. So yeah, if you come to Fortaleza, or any other country really, but specifically a place like this that is not completely internationalized, you will have to invest some energy into learning the language. And I have to note that you don't have to be perfect in the language. My Portuguese, I started learning this language in my 30s, so it's not like a 12-year-old learning a second language. So my Portuguese sounds like any other first generation immigrant of any country. It is imperfect, but it is sufficient for communicating in the language. And it's also a lot of fun because, especially in a place like this, there are not that many foreign people. So I think that a lot of people here kind of get a kick out of hearing my crazy Portuguese, but they are very patient, and they are willing to support me when I can communicate with them in their own language.